Alright, what is up, my friends? Welcome. It's Bronze to Mythic time, almost. Not quite just yet, but it is Lost Caverns of Ixalan limited time. And we're doing a new thing here we're doing on Bronze to Mythic where we're going to go over all of the archetypes based around their Signpost uncommon. Of course, Bronze to Mythic starts today, actually. Boom. Nope, wrong one. Boom. There it is. Starts today, this evening, first episode on YouTube tomorrow. I'm pumped. You should be too. The set looks freaking awesome for limited. And before we do that, though, I want to go over the archetypes. So, of course, those who don't know, in every set, there are always 10 multicolor uncommons. They kind of give you an idea of what each archetype is about. So they're called signpost uncommons, and each one sort of denotes, hey, these two colors care about doing this sort of thing. Might be a really tight theme, might be a loose theme, but it's a theme nonetheless, and very, very important. You got to understand what each color pair wants to do. So let's do it. Let's hop right in with our first signpost uncommon here in blue-white. This is actually a very interesting one to start with. It's the only one that's not a legend, and the only one that is not is a double-face card as well. So we have Master's Guide Mural here, which is a 5-mana Azorius artifact. When ETBs make a 4/4 blue and white artifact token, then it has Craft with Artifact. Now, if you see my set review, you'll know what Craft does. Check it out on the main Jim Davis MTG channel. But reminder, Craft with Artifact means that you can pay the mana cost at sorcery speed and exile whatever it says, artifact in this case, from your graveyard or play to flip it. And it flips into a Master's Manufactory, which taps makes a 4/4 if an artifact is entered the battlefield under your control this turn. So basically, if an artifact enters the battlefield under your control, tap make a 4/4. The turn you flip this, it counts itself, makes a 4/4. So very powerful engine for making 4/4s, but cares about if artifacts have entered the battlefield under your control, and if you have an artifact in play and or in your graveyard to craft with. Now, so I said the word artifact like 14 times there. Very clearly, blue-white is all about artifacts. A lot of artifact stuff here. We can see cards like Inverted Iceberg, another craft card. Of course, craft. A lot of craft with artifact cards that are, kind of artifacts. They do a sorcery kind of type thing, but then stay in play as an artifact. And they can craft also, which is pretty important as well. This one's the Iceberg, mill and draw, and then becomes a 6/6, which is pretty awesome. And then we have cards like Dusk Rose Reliquary, which is one mana removal spell, similar to Bone Splinters, where you sacrifice an artifact or creature, and you get this really good removal spell. Also an artifact that stays in play, which is cool. We got Oaken Siren, 2-mana flyer for a 1/2 flying vigilance, tap for mana, but only for artifacts. You get the idea here. Artifact, 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 artifact. We also have Zoetic Glyph, 2-mana for an enchantment aura. Kind of makes a artifact into a 5/4, and when it dies, discover 3, cascade for 3. So, artifacts of the name of the game of blue-white. And let's say, is an archetype really, really strong synergy or weak synergy? This is a very strong synergy archetype. So, you want to have as many artifacts as possible. One important thing to note when you're drafting an artifact deck is that every card that's not an artifact in your deck, like Zoetic Glyph, has a huge barrier for entry, because every non-artifact you're playing makes all your other artifact cards worse. So, thing to be aware of, too. So, a lot of trinkets, a lot of tappy stuff. Probably going to be a more defensive deck. Obviously, you want to get later in the game, you use your craft cards, which give huge value. Crafting a 6/6 or crafting a manufacturer is a good way to win a long game. So, prioritize being defensive, prioritize staying alive, and prioritize artifacts and getting your stuff together. Moving on to Boros, we see Kabarakti Sunborn, which is a 4-mana 4/4. And whenever it attacks, you may tap to untapped artifacts and or creatures you control if you do discover 3. So the Boros mechanic is all about tapping 2 untapped artifacts and or creatures you control. So a lot of crossover here. And the reason why this looks like a good set to me is that there's a lot of crossover between archetypes, meaning that it's not super linear. In Phyrexia all be one. The infect cards only work in the infect deck. The artifact cards only work in the artifact deck, and so on and so forth. Whereas seeing all this crossover, kind of Kamigawa Neon Dynasty style, means that a lot of your cards can do different things in different archetypes. So we see here, you can use the artifacts like the Dusk Rose Reliquary and stuff for tapping. But in a slightly more aggressive way. So this card's obviously great by itself. It's a 4/4 with a lot of upside. But we see cards like Diamond Pickaxe, which is a 1/1 equipment, can make a lot of treasures. That gives you things to tap to your effects. You've got Glorifier of Suffering, which ETBs sacrifice an artifact or creature and put counters somewhere. So you can sacrifice your random artifacts laying around tokens, so on and so forth. Guardian of the Great Door, kind of a fun card with Improvise and Convoke, where you can tap artifacts or creatures to cast this thing. So I have a random artifact in play, a random token in play. That's pretty sweet. And then we come to probably the most important card in the entire format. This card could have gone in half of these archetypes. Tinkerer's Tote. The mana artifact makes 2/1 tokens. This is 3 artifacts to tap for stuff. 3 artifacts for all your artifacty stuff. You can sacrifice this to the graveyard. That'll put an artifact in the graveyard for craft. You can descend off this thing too. Just like does literally everything in every archetype. My pick for best white common. Very good here, obviously, in like the tap 2 things archetype because it gives you 3 things to tap. But very, very powerful card overall. This one's more of a little bit of a looser archetype. You want to have a lot of artifacts. It's a little tight, I guess. You want to have a lot of artifacts, pay off all your stuff, and there are a lot of cards that tap to sacrifice 2 artifacts. So, moving on to the last Jeskai color pair in Izzet, we have Captain Storm Cosmium Raider. Depending for a 2/2, whenever an artifact ETB is under your control, put a counter on a pirate you control. So a little bit of tribal stuff here. Obviously, there are pirates in the set. This obviously can count itself, so you put counters on it. But we see more artifact stuff, right? So we have pirates, but more artifacts coming into play and doing things. A card like Sunfire Torch works really well here. It's an equipment, but it's kind of just a shock, really. It's equipment, you play it, you put it on something, attack, and then sack it to shock something. Again, an artifact you can play. You can tap it to your tappy stuff. It counts for your crafty stuff in the graveyard. Counts for descend. Just a lot of little things, right? It's kind of like the shock variant in the set. Pirate Hat. Really simple, obviously. Just an artifact. It triggers all your artifact stuff, and then cheap to go on pirates. Not a great card, but definitely a synergy card for pirate stuff. Staunch Crewmate, phenomenal card. 2 mana for a 2/1. EDB, top 4 cards. Find a pirate or artifact. Really, really good in the artifact deck. Really good in the pirate deck, but obviously a pirate itself. Again, a lot of cross synergy here, which is really, really cool. Plundering Pirate, EDB, make a treasure. Obviously good, in multiple archetypes, but it's a pirate, which is important because you got to have pirates in your pirate deck. And this is a little more of a loose archetype. Not really. You have a lot of artifacts, but like some pirate stuff going on too. A lot of crossovers. Those 3 colors have a lot of crossover. We get to Simic, blue-green, and this is probably one of the looser themes. So some themes are really heavy. You want to have a lot of it. You want to have a lot of artifacts, do a lot of artifact payoffs, because you want to make all your bad cards work together to do good things. Explore, being the blue-green mechanic, is just a really good mechanic. You don't really need to work that hard to make it good. Cards like Pathfinding Axejaw, just 4/3 EDB Explore. Of course, exploring is a real top card of your library. If it's a land, you draw it. If it's not a land, you put it in your graveyard or on top and get a counter. So it's either a big creature or a draw, which is great. Riverhold Scout, EDB Explore. Sea Note Scout, EDB Explore. Exploring is just great. It's really, really good in a game of limited. Don't need to do too much to make it good. Merfolk Cave Diver here. Kind of looks like a payoff for Explore. Isn't very good, honestly. It's a 2/4. You explore, get a very small bonus, but exploring is a bonus in and of itself, So the one caveat to that is Current Conductor here, which is a really, really good payoff for exploring. But it's also just a 2/3 for 2, which is just like fine stats anyway. So you explore, you put extra land into play, put counters on this thing also. Just a really good card. Definitely a loose archetype. Blue-green, explore, don't need to be that deep in. All the cards are kind of good by themselves, and that's going to be a looser one for sure. Up next is Golgari with Aquali, the Seething Tower. This is the Descend archetype. Descend is to have a number of permanent cards in your graveyard, either 4, 8, or a lot. Descend 4, 8, or Fathomless. In this case, Aquali is a 5/5 if you have 4 or more permanent cards in your graveyard, and then a 7/7 with extra abilities if it has 8 or more. So a lot of self-mill here. Getting cards in the graveyard obviously will happen naturally as the game goes on. But for 4 and 8, that's a lot, So 4 creature combat trades or whatever is a lot. So want to do self-mill stuff, right? So some payoffs here. Echo of Dusk, Descend 4. It's 3/3 lifelink here, which is very, very good. The Scavenger, EDB, and Eternal Witness, also very, very good. But to get there, we have the mill cards, right? So we have cards like Mind Shaft Spider, EDB, Good Body, Mill 2. In the Presence of Ages, 3 mana for an instant. Look at the top 4. Bin the ones you don't pick, get a creature or land. So these cards are cards that kind of fill your graveyard. A lot of crossover in the Sultai colors as far as graveyard stuff goes. Of course, exploring will naturally just put cards in the graveyard. Partially why Explorer is so good. It's an enabler, but also a payoff in itself. But exploring will help fill your graveyard for your Golgari stuff. And then we want to move on to Dimir. Same idea. Lots of graveyard stuff, right? So Ukbenbak, the Great Mistake, is your uncommon signpost in Dimir. That meant for a 6/4 Vigilance Mana. That's a pretty good body, honestly. It's fine. And that's Descend 8, which is a lot. Return this from a graveyard with a finality counter. 8's a lot of cards. But if you're really hard into self-mill, this card's insane, right? It's a huge creature. Comes back as a huge creature. That's great. And we see a lot more Descend stuff here in Dimir. Stinging Cave Crawlers on their payoff here. It's a 1/3 death touch for 3, which is fine. And if you are Descended, you can attack and draw cards, which is insane. We got the Puzzle Door, which is another card that just seems good in everything. It's a 1 mana sleight of hand, puts cards in your graveyard, triggers Descend, goes to the graveyard. It's also an artifact for your artifact stuff, your craft stuff. Another one of those kind of glue cards like Tinkerer's Tote, probably in line, was one of the best blue commons. Chupacabra Echo, big payoff for having things in your graveyard as well. And then cards like Deathcap Marionette will help you mill. So a card like this is great, right? So 1/1 Death Touch for 2, you play it, you mill 2, you block something. That's 3 cards in the graveyard all by itself. Hopefully they're mostly permanents, you get to descend. So that's going to be a huge one as well. Moving on to Rakdos. Rakdos cares about descended, not descend, kind of weird, I know, but it cares about the act of things going to the graveyard. So descended means a permanent card was put into your graveyard from anywhere. Note that it's a card, not a token, but a card means that you can mill a card, you can discard a card, you can cycle a card. So any of those various effects will trigger this. And this is a good, good sized creature. Beginning of your end step, they have to lose a permanent or some life or whatever. It's pretty powerful. And a lot of the Golgari cards care about being able to descend every turn and getting a bonus. So Screaming Phantom here, 2/2 flyer for 3, attack, mill a card. That means you can descend every turn. Pretty cool. Deadweight, removal spell, but also descend. It's a permanent, kind of cool. Also counts for what's it called? Descend 8 or 4, whatever. Deep Goblin Skulker, Skull Taker. Creature gets bigger if you descended a card. Awesome. Volatile Wanderglyph, 2 mana for a 2/2. Whenever it becomes tapped, discard a card, draw a card. That's another descend trigger also. So Rakdos cares about actively descending every turn for bonuses, which is pretty cool. Black-white, kind of similar, honestly. Also kind of a descend color combination, more of a sack outlet, right? So you have Bartholomew here, which is a 2/1. You can sack an artifact or creature and make it bigger. That, of course, can descend whenever you want. And we have Fanatical Offering, kind of a sack theme here in Black-white, which helps you descend, but also gives you value as well. So the Offering can sacrifice things for value, drawing cards. We got Rune Lurker Bat, similar to the Rakdos cards, wherever you've descended, you get a bonus. You get to scry 1. Also a good lifelinker, which is pretty sweet. Acolyte, sack things for drain. Synapse Necromage, whenever it dies, make 2 tokens. So a lot of, sacrifice, a lot of, getting value off sacrifices. Kind of in a similar vein to descend, but also, these tokens don't descend, but you can sack them to your other stuff, which is kind of cool as well. So kind of a black-white sack theme. Green-white is pretty different. Green-white cares about having creatures that are larger than their base power and toughness. Very, very odd wording here, right? Whenever one or more creatures you control, each with power greater than its base power, deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. So basically, if you have a creature that is a power bigger than the written number on the card, you get a bonus here. You get to draw a card. Very, very powerful. It's also just a 3/3, and your opponent can't cast spells in your turn. Very, very solid card. So this is a much looser theme here about pumping things, right? So you have Iron Paw Aspirant. This is a 1/2. Put a counter on things. We've seen this card before. It's been awesome. This is now a 1/2 instead of a 1/1, which is great. By itself, this is a 2/3 for 2 that counts as a bonus power, if you will. So it'll trigger the Exemplar. We have Jade Seedstones, which puts counters on things as well. We've got Mammolet Battleglyph, which is a fight effect that can also put a counter on things. So kind of a light theme here. These cards are just good, right? Buffing your creatures is just good. Just like Explorer is good, buffing your creatures is good. The War Scribe here pumps the whole team. Pretty good if you're going wide regardless. And kind of a looser theme there in green-white. Whereas we have this like Jeskai trio of artifact stuff and this Sultai trio of graveyard stuff. Green-white's kind of doing its own little thing here. And then red-green is also doing its own little thing here with dinosaurs. By far the simplest of the archetypes. Firstborn of Gishath here is the Signpost uncommon for red-green. This card's busted. 2/3 haste for 2 is great, but you aren't going to want to do it most of the time because you're going to want to kick it and kill some things. So by itself, you can pay 4 mana for a 2/3 haste that does 2 damage to a creature. But with a bigger dino in play, this can pay and bite with that dino, which is insane. This card is just insanely good. And mostly the dino cards just kind of slap, right? Triumphant Chomp is a shock or more if you have dinosaurs. Earthshaker Dreadmaw is just busted. It's just a Colossal Dreadmaw, which is already good enough, but you just draw a card for each dinosaur. Insane. Each other dinosaur. Armored Kinkar, 3/3, gain 3 life if you have a dinosaur. Belligerent Yearling, 3/2 for trample for 2, gets bigger if you have a dinosaur. So all these cards are just good, right? Just pure rate. Very, very loose theme. You don't need to add that many dinosaurs. These cards are just good enough by themselves. And going to be an easier archetype to draft, although less crossover. So all the archetypes, you have the Jeskai archetypes, you have blue-white, red-white, and blue-red, all carrying about artifacts. We have Sultai colors, blue-green, green-black, and Dimir, all carrying about the graveyard. And then you kind of have green-white with some power toughness stuff, and red-green with some dinosaur stuff. Those are the looser themes. These graveyard and artifact themes are a little more tight, but they kind of cross over as well, which is really, really cool. So that's the rundown, folks. Starts tonight. I'll see you there for Bronze To Mythic. Should be really, really exciting. If you want to see a complete set review where I go over every card in full detail, go to my main channel, Jim Davis MTG, where I have a complete set review, all the cards, constructed and limited. That'll give you the real thick breakdown. But Otherwise, I'll see you soon. I'll see you tonight or maybe tomorrow on YouTube for the start of the new brews. Again, I'm pumped for this set. I think it's going to be a phenomenal draft set. Again, what makes the set really, really cool is all the crossover. When you aren't just locked in an archetype, we're up on dinosaurs, up on this. All the crossover between the multicolors, which is just the colors is really, really cool. I'm pumped. You should be too. Check it out. Like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you think about this content because it's obviously a new piece of content for me. And let's rock and roll.